Good morning. It's a new week. I hope you had a good Sunday. I hope that you found ways to worship God this weekend from home, whether that was praying with family or tuning in to watch a church service online. It's been so good, hasn't it, to have time to lift up our hearts to God this weekend. And today we're going to begin a little series in these morning reflections. Between now and Saturday, we're going to think together about 6 days that changed the world. This time that we're living through right now will certainly make an impact on our world's history, and you know there'll be loads of analysis of that in our news and our media. But when we look at the world's story from God's perspective, there are chapters in that story far, far more significant than the virus around us now. So this week, we're going to turn our hearts to 6 days that changed the world. And today, we begin with the very first day, the day that God began to create. So let's read together from Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 to 3. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. The writers of Genesis wanted us to know a few things very clearly about the world that we live in. Firstly, it exists because God wants it to exist. Light and darkness, sky, sea and land, plants and trees, birds and fish, stars and planets, all of the animals. They exist because God spoke. And that was true at the beginning, but it's still true now. God is still the one who sustains all things, who holds this world and all who live in it. So it exists because God wants it to exist. And secondly, that God is the loving King over all creation. The book of Job, chapter 38, tells us that the Lord Almighty is the one who laid the foundations of the earth, who sets the limits for the sea, who gives orders to the morning and shows the dawn its place. And so it is the joy of all of creation to live in worship of him. Of course, human history has shown us right from the start that we haven't always lived to worship God. We haven't always acknowledged God as the creator and the rightful king over this world. And that human rebellion is the reason that we needed a few more of these days that changed the world, and we'll reflect on those later this week. But for today, for this moment, as we're so conscious that the world feels out of our own control, today let's lift up our hearts to the Creator God, who still holds and sustains his creation. God our King is on his throne, and so we are to find our joy in worshipping him. So shall we share today some photos of that beautiful creation that God has made? It might be the flowers on your windowsill or a bird that you can see in the garden. It might be a photo that you can find online of a favourite beach or mountain range anywhere in the world. Is there a part of God's creation that inspires you to lift your heart in thanks to the Creator? The day that God began to create was a day that truly changed the world. So let's share our praise to God for that day today.